Once I had to take a night shift in one of the morgues. The work was not difficult, 24 hours a day, 3 days a week, no complaints from clients. At first it was scary and unpleasant, but then I got used to it. One evening I went on duty and met a Serbian, Marko Mitric, who had worked in the morgue for about 20 years. He came up to me and said, "Tonight, lock yourself in your watch room and don't come out. No matter what happens. It's a bad night. First night of the full moon, anything can happen." Naturally, I got angry. I said all sorts of epithets to Marko. I was offended that an uneducated watchman was trying to scare me. A man with a higher education. Marko listened to me calmly and said, "Suit yourself, I warned you." Then he turned around and walked away. By the end of the workday, I had almost forgotten about the incident. But one thing made me suspicious. Marko was sober and talking quite seriously. After work, the chief medical examiner stayed late to talk to me about philosophical topics. We sat in the duty room and argued, but I couldn't let go of the thought that Marko was sober and calm. Late that night, my interlocutor left. I locked the door behind him and was left alone. I checked the freezer, made sure everything was in order in the sorter rooms, turned out the lights, and went back to the duty room. In the morgue everything is organized as follows. The front door, next to the duty room, and a long T-shaped corridor, at the end of which there are doors leading to the cadaver storage, projectors and other rooms. All night long several lamps are lit in the corridor. The light should also be on in the duty room, but the watchmen always turn it off when they go to bed. The doors, except for the exit door, are not closed anywhere, just tightly shut. There is a latch on the door in the guardroom, but the door is always left wide open. That was the case that night. It is quiet outside. No wind, no traffic noise. A low moon hangs in the sky. I read Grimmelshausen, but from time to time I listen to the silence. At midnight I started to feel sleepy, so I decided to lie down. And then I heard the door creak in the corridor. Barely audible, but still creaked. I looked out of the duty room. The light in the corridor was dim, scattered, and where the doors were, it was dark. I couldn't see anything. I felt a little uneasy. I thought I would go and see why the door had opened. To give myself confidence, I stepped firmly, my footsteps echoing dully, and then I noticed, no, rather felt, some subtle movement ahead, in the darkness. I remembered Marko's words, "Lock yourself in and don't come out, no matter what happens." Slowly I retreated to the duty room, slamming the door shut and locking it shut. There is a rustle of quick footsteps in the corridor, which break off at the very door. Then there's a hard tug on the handle from outside. The door yields a few millimeters, but the latch won't let her in any further. An indistinct dark silhouette flickers through the gap, and the sweet smell of a corpse wafts into the watchroom. The next instant, I'm gripping the doorknob with savage strength. From the hallway, something creepy is trying to get through to me. Scratching at the door, yanking the handle, fumbling with the jambs and walls, all in complete silence. I can't even hear my breath, just the smell of formalin and cold from behind the door. As dawn breaks, the corridor becomes dead silent. No more scratching, no more tearing at the door, but I can't let go of the handle for a long time. I stand there, clutching at it with fingers white with tension. The insistent ringing brings me back to reality and forces me to open the door. The corridor is plain and empty, and it seems like everything that happened last night was a wild, nightmarish dream. The lock is jammed, as always, and it takes me a long time to get it open. Finally I do. On the porch stands my replacement. "Well, you're a healthy sleeper. I've been calling for an hour." He marvels. I mumbled something about how I'd had too much whiskey, that I hadn't heard anything, and that I'd better not be touched today. The workday is in full swing, and I can't bring myself to go home. Nervously smoking on the porch of the service entrance, desperately trying to understand what happened last night, whether it was reality or a dream. Nearby Smoke, senior prosector, asks me something. I answer him something, but in my head only one thought. It was a dream. It cannot be. At that moment, a trainee comes out onto the porch. Andrew, strange case. I'm doing an autopsy on a drowned man. You know, the one they brought in the day before yesterday. And he's got a lot of white paint under his fingernails. What's so strange? Asks the senior prosector lazily. The paint is dried, old, but the nails and nail tears on the corpse's hands are post-mortem, fresh, in my opinion. They leave, and I go to the door of the duty room. At the height of a man's height, on the smooth white surface, clearly visible semicircular scratches and uneven chips. It was a dead man chasing me. Asterisk, 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 morgue, asterisk, 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 asterisk. People enter the morgue in different ways, and meet death in different ways. Some pass away surrounded by relatives, others in a sewer well or on a door jamb. For some, death is a release from agony. For others, it is a sudden blow of fate. The morgue receives everyone with the same impartiality, young and old, rich and poor, loved and abandoned. Why did you come on Thursday? Alex the orderly asks. To understand what's going on, you should have come on Monday morning. First of all, they don't do autopsies on weekends. Secondly, suicides are more common on weekdays. Maybe loneliness or excessive drinking, who knows? Suicides are autopsied with the utmost care. What if it's murder? The forensics dot the I's and T's. Even if the body was cut by an electric train, the remains will still be opened, according to technology. Alex will lament the extra work to open the skull of someone who left a wet spot after the train. A morgue attendant, like a lathe operator at a lathe, must keep his tools ready. Alex understands that. Otherwise, there will be a headache, and it is better not to allow a headache. He would like to relax after the next autopsy, but the relatives at the door will not let him forget. They do not understand the specifics of the morgue, as if conspiring, come for the bodies of relatives in cars from the morning and demand to issue a death certificate and the body immediately. But they can't do it immediately. The doctor expert at the autopsy is one, and there are many dead. An autopsy is the same operation, which requires time and effort. Those who are alive, while waiting, behave differently. Someone quietly cries, and someone, seeing a closed window in the reception desk, climbs in and shouts at the employee drinking tea. How? Do you eat here too? Morgue workers are experts. Orderlies and other staff do not take offense at the living. They try to help as much as possible. The autopsy cannot be accelerated, but the process of dressing the deceased and putting him in the coffin is automatic. If the elevator works, there will be no problems with lifting the gurney with the body. But the elevator, like other morgue equipment, is worn out over the years and often refuses to serve. Then have to work orderlies. They go down to the basement, roll out from behind a massive door, as if from a crypt, a body covered with a blanket, and manually drag it upstairs, cursing the designers who designed the turns in the staircase, which can only be passed manually, with the body on the weight. What if the body is decomposed and swollen? Paramedics need to remove the bag mass so that it doesn't spill out on the way. Otherwise, cleanup will be a real problem and a new bag will be needed for the remains. It doesn't come down to bodies spilling in the morgue. They are found in sewer wells, basements, manholes or attics. Spoiled was brought in on knee, too. The jacket's still intact, and the sneakers. The rest of it's best not to look at. But the experts work with such material with a full autopsy program. Maybe the poor guy will be identified by his sneakers or his jacket, but he'll go to his final resting place in a bag. And if they don't, after a while, he'll be buried under a registration number. He'll be taken to the cemetery by the mortuary staff. It's a free add-on to the duties of the mortuary's in-house photographer, Samantha. She will take pictures of the remains, escort them to the burial site, document everything and return to her direct duties. It's not a woman's job, I tell Samantha. Not a woman's job, she agrees. But someone has to do the job. In the morgue, it's hard to say that anyone has dreamed of it since they were a child. I came here by accident too. I thought I'd get a job. I stayed. That's the way it is here. Either they leave right away or they stay. Not everyone can work in a morgue. If you can, you stay and carry the burden until the end. Expert doctors Nathan Church, Harry Bohr, and Sergio Orcas did their job, until the end of their days. None of them lived to retire. It seems that they, working with what remains of a person after death, coarsened to insensitivity. But medical examiner Eddie Tohon, who had just opened 5 adult corpses, broke on the 6th, a child. He himself went to the call, himself took the boy out of the noose, himself opened the skinny body. Children in the morgue are not uncommon. They die of disease, of our adult carelessness, of ridiculous accidents. But each little body on the big cutting table is perceived as a personal tragedy. They are opened carefully, as if they were alive, dressed and combed as if they wanted to make amends. Children's corpses rarely have to be lowered into the cold room. The inconsolable parents bring and take the children out of the morgue as quickly as possible. But recently, there was a little girl who wasn't picked up for a whole week. The mother got a death certificate and disappeared. We had to call the children's polyclinic to get someone to go and find out what's happened. It turned out that the parents had received an allowance for the child's funeral and drank it. This used to happen rarely, so that relatives did not take the dead. Now, there are several cases every month. Mostly old people are rejected. They come to pick up the death certificate to receive benefits and disappear. The morgue workers then call the relatives, appealing to their conscience. Sometimes it works, more often it doesn't. They refer to the cost, to long-standing offences, to the state, which is obliged. Children refuse to bury their parents, sisters, their brothers, their sisters. The refuseniks are collected and taken to the cemetery by Samantha. Sometimes, then they call the morgue to find out where the dear grave is. More often they don't. Sometimes there are exceptions. It was Monday, a tough day for the morgue. There were so many corpses, there was nowhere to put them. We had to sort them out. Those who were waiting for relatives behind the wall, the orderly laid on tables, prepared for autopsy, and unidentified, on the floor, under the wash basin. Suddenly a guy comes running in. Usually the door's locked, but they forgot to lock it. He rushed to one corpse, then another, then under the sink, grabbed the dead guy, held him against him, cried. It was his father, missing for 2 days. The boy went off his feet looking for him. He found him. Alex felt uncomfortable, but what was his fault? There's nowhere to stack the corpses. The cold room has room for 6 gurneys. There's a second one, but the equipment in it is barely working, and it, too, is loaded to the brim. In the cold season in the morgue is cold. Corpses do not spoil. In summer everything is different. Corpses spoil before your eyes. Stench, stench. Open windows do not help. How many curses and insults the morgue workers listened to during those hot days. Relatives shouted, cried and left, and employees work from bell to bell. Is it easy? Is it easy to sweep the clothes and other rags of a homeless woman into a dustpan? The clerks sweep it up, wash it, do what they're supposed to do. Then they take them to the dustbin, where the same homeless people are waiting to put on the clothes just taken off the dead homeless person. The homeless are in demand for any rags, so they are on duty at the morgue in the hope of making a profit. This is how the contagion spreads, from the dead to the living.